Blog Talk Radio.
Opening music provided by bensound.com. Welcome everyone to today's Earth Energy Forecast Show on this Tuesday, February 11th, 2020. Thank you for listening today, or if you're listening later to the podcast. I am your host, Joan Serio. Well, today I am going to welcome someone that is just perfect for this show. And if you like what you hear on Earth Energy Forecast, I encourage you to click the follow button so you'll be notified every time we go live. So today, Pepper Lewis, who is going to be joining us soon, has been working with the Earth and as a spokesperson for Gaia and for all of her inhabitants for quite some time. Pepper Lewis, beloved by many, is often called a wise woman of the Earth. Pepper is the author of 5 books, dozens of media programs, and a rich legacy of work in the field of personal development. She is widely recognized for her contribution to the redefinition of contemporary spiritual life. Her wisdom is refreshing, accessible, and relevant. Pepper's website is pepperkeenlewis.com. Welcome to the show, Pepper. I'm so pleased to have you with us today.
Hi, Joan. Thanks so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this for, I don't know, since we booked it. Since we booked our time together, I've been looking really forward to this.
Well, that makes 2 of us, and I'm so glad to have you on the show because, this show is just made for people like you. You know, there's so much information I know we're going to get out there today, and I love just going back and forth with people that love the Earth as much as I do. And I just want to, before we get going, open this up to everybody on the air today that we're going to take some callers. Is that true, Pepper?
Yes, it's true.
Okay, so if you would like to ask Pepper a question, all you have to do is call 657-383-0013, and I will endeavor to get you on the air so that you can ask your question. So, there's so much going on right now, Pepper, isn't there?
Yeah, I just heard you say, that this show is that we're perfect for this show and for people who love the Earth as much as you do. And I thought for a minute, this for a lot of people, it's a tough time to love the Earth right now. It's not the easiest time to either be in love with the Earth or fall in love with the Earth for the first time. It's not easy these days.
No. And this is the time when she needs our love more than ever.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And isn't that the case like with, with our wayward teenagers when we were raising kids or anything like that? It just seems like right when someone needs our love more than ever, it's not always the easiest time for us to offer that.
Exactly. Yes. And it seems like things are accelerated right now, too. Are we keeping up with how quickly the Earth seems to be changing now?
So I think that there is a part of us, if without dissecting ourselves, I think that the part of us that is whole and always has been, the part of us that is connected to the Earth and to this great cycle of things and cycle of change, I think that part of us is keeping pace. But the part of us that is very, 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 very human, understandably so, the part of us that is necessarily tied to using resources that are exploited in some ways, and yet we need them. And the part of us that can't quite see beyond that, those parts are not keeping pace, I think.
Yes, yes, yes. And it's interesting that you put it that way, because for me, it feels like I am, as Greg Braden put it, walking between the worlds right now. And there's a part of me that's in the old, or the part of me that's in the physical body in this 3D reality, and a part of me that's not here, that is, the consciousness is raising. We're going to these other dimensions, these other levels of consciousness, and it's this tightrope walk.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah. The other night I watched a documentary called, I think it's called Surviving Progress. And that's really what it was about. How do we survive, these amazing strides that we've made. Yeah, these amazing strides that we have made in agriculture, in getting some of the resources out of the planet and making them usable. And of course, the other side of that is the exploitation of other countries, the needless to say, the greed and where that comes from, corporate greed and financial returns and things like that. So, and it was one of those documentaries where they interview economists and financial experts, different things like that. And I can't say that it was bleak, but it wasn't necessarily positive in that, and that's the problem with these things right now, is where are the solutions? I think we can all pinpoint where the problems are, and for some people who the problems are, but it's very difficult to move from there on to, okay, where are these real solutions now? And the thing is that they don't necessarily lie by fixing the problems we have now. The solutions might be by creating entirely different systems. And that's where we hit these walls, because the people with the ability to create new systems are also those that are in some way still benefiting, profiting from the old systems. And so it's really hard to let that go.
Or still trying to solve the problem, and I'll put solve in quotation marks, with the same mind that created it, instead of, as Einstein said, you have to come from a different perspective in order to solve the problem. And kind of like we were talking about walking that tightrope, there's those that are still, I will just make it easy, in the old, and there's those that are in the new, and there's those that are in between. And if we keep going back to what was, well, we're being certainly forced to go to what is becoming, it's not going to work. It's just not going to manifest.
Yeah.
So you talked about this shift that we're going through, and I was going to ask this towards the end, but let's do it now. So what do you see as the cause for all of this change that we're going through? What's creating all of this?
Well, honestly, the answer I have may be somewhat of a metaphysical answer. In some ways, to some extent, I would say that some of these changes are inevitable. Some of this is what evolution looks like. Sometimes we're building and creating and making all this, and then when we've built and created and admired and lived with, when it begins to outlive its usefulness, its practicality, its ability to evolve, then it begins to break down. And we could be talking about our bodies, so the aging process. We cannot stay youthful forever. And, much as we might not like that and fight against it, eventually, whether it's a tree or vegetables. I grow vegetables every year, and at a certain point you can tell when they have reached their maturity, and from there it begins to break down. And the same is true of systems. And so now is one of those times where some of our systems are showing real signs of wear and tear and beginning to break down a little bit, or a lot. So this is nature. This is nature in evidence to us. This is what we are witnessing right now. And so we are witnessing the breakdown of whether it's government systems, social systems, educational systems, agricultural. It doesn't really matter so much in what direction we're looking at. Some of them are more accelerated than others. So this is nature at work, where this is the breakdown of things. And because we live in the microcosm much of the time, we're not looking at the bigger picture. We're looking at what's happening. This is happening to me. This is happening to us. This is happening to our family. So it's hard to see the bigger picture, that this is how nature evolves and that something else will come of it. So that's part of the answer. If you are one who studies really large metaphysical events and esoteric changes, you would really see that some of these things we talk about, where the Piscean age begins to end and the Aquarian age begins to come forward, you would see this at work as well. So in Pisces was very associated with religion, with following rules, with a deeper meaning of things, with I don't know, if I have to think about more, it'll come to me. Aquarius, more associated with science, not religion, but science, with technology, with a different way to use resources. It's very mental. Pisces is more emotional. So right now, we're kind of caught up or in between these two great forces, and it's moving toward Aquarius. This is what the precession of the equinoxes looks like. And so we are living through this now. So rather than kind of looking at it in a book and looking up our birth date and our birth sign and looking up our horoscope for the month or the year, we are in the midst of this great periodic change. And it's hard to both live in it and look at it objectively.
Yes. So looking at it through the eyes of an evolutionary astrologer, to look at the larger cycles that are happening. And, some say that when Saturn goes into Aquarius, which is going to happen later this year, and then it will retrograde back, I think September. It'll be there from March till September, and then it retrogrades back into Capricorn. But then next year it'll go. That's really when we enter into this Aquarian age. And like you said, we are going back and forth just because of this retrograde period. Like we dip our toe into this, and then we're back into this old again to say, okay, what did that feel like? Was it too cold? Do you want to, do you really want to jump into the pool?
Yeah. And we see this with the polarity of people right now, the polarity between our countries and governments. We see this with the struggle between religion and science, kind of pulling and tugging at each other in a kind of an antagonistic way. So, if we were looking at this like this great mythological story, we would see kind of like the heavens at war with one another, with eventually one sign and everything that it symbolizes winning that war and being in charge of some of the influences of the earth for that next really large period of time, which is about 26,000 years, as we know, give or take, depending on what system that you follow. And then during those years, there are different phases in which Aquarius this time will manifest itself as well. So a certain number of time when it's very, very rigid. These are the rules. These are the laws. And this is the way it must be, and then a loosening of that and tightening. And so you see the sign itself manifesting different qualities during this great, long period of time. So you could say in some ways that we're so fortunate to be here on the earth right now as both participants and witnesses of this. And on the other hand, it's really uncomfortable and it's really hard, and we don't really have to like it, certainly not from the human perspective.
And also Aquarius is about humanity, and it's about being that humanitarian and seeing that we're all one. So if we can use the science, use the technology, or see things not only from a spiritual perspective, but from a scientific perspective, and work towards that, all is one principle, that maybe we can advance too.
That, I love the sound of that. And when I'm in my meditations and when I'm in my own quiet belief structures, I am there. I am with we are all one. When I go out into the world, I don't always feel that way. And it's always...
Well, there is the challenge.
I'm like, sometimes I have this great meditative morning, and I'm with my spiritual readings and writings, and I'm so proud of myself. And I'm like, look, I've transcended this and I've transcended that. And sometimes it doesn't take but 5 to 20 minutes when I'm out in the world. And like, what happened? What happened to this great space that I was in? Why did that person cut me off? Or, why did this person charge me, twice instead of once? Or all of these things, and then it's very quickly not so easy. So, sometimes I get on my soapbox with about spiritual teachers that do make it look very easy, just meditate, just say we are all one, and it'll be that, just do this or just do that. It's like, these, it's easy to say those things. Like, it's real easy to say, let's go on a diet and we'll just lose whatever 20 pounds and this month or whatever, and it just doesn't work that way, even though we would like it to.
Yes, it's hard to put into practice, and I like to think that the challenges that are, and I call them challenges when I am challenged too, are there to help me to grow. And so I'm like, okay, so how could I have done that better? What is that teaching me? To turn it into a learning type of thing, and to be gentle as much as I can with myself, because I know for myself I can get into that self-talk that's can be pretty harsh at times, and to remember that it's about self-love, and we're all here to learn, and we're all human, and we're all going through a lot. And when I think, gee, you were hard on that person, they're going through this as much as you are, and then I stop and I'm like, okay, then the compassion kicks back in. Yeah, I think that's a great reminder. So what else can we do right now besides, stopping and thinking, okay, how could I have done that better? Being gentle with ourselves to help us through these very challenging times.
Well, I think what we can do somewhat depends upon what kind of person we are, how we are arranged, let's say. So if we are someone who is quick to anger, particularly about the things we see in the world right now, injustices and things like that, then it is better that we limit our time with either all those ways that we can remain informed all the time right now. Banners and notifications on our phones and on our computers. If we are going to be very strongly affected by these things, then it is better to stay informed in times when we choose to, and not times when these automatic things are happening for us. If we are someone who is more happily about being an activist in the world, and I think that there are many opportunities to become involved, and that doesn't necessarily mean with our pocketbook or giving money or volunteering, which some people are too busy to do, but there are ways to remain actively interested using our intent within certain subjects that we are aware of awareness, as silly as that sounds, in these specific subjects, and that we are in some way wanting to be responsible for those particular areas of life to change or to move forward or to get out of their stuck place or wherever it is. Because a lot of the people that I talk to, for instance, say, oh, I would love to help, or I would love to become involved in this or that, but I don't have the time, or I don't have the resources to share. And sometimes we can do so much with just our intent because we don't really realize that that links us not only to the subject, but to others who might feel that way. And when we work with intent, sometimes I think we forget that intent works a little bit like our, like our subconscious works, subconscious, unconscious, and these particular areas don't work with negativity. So they don't work by saying, I don't want that to happen. They work by saying, this is a positive direction for our Earth, for our planet, and I strongly support, let's say, this humanitarian effort in regard to animal husbandry or whatever. I'm just picking something here. So it works that way. It works, intention moves as we move things up and out from the inner planes. And it just doesn't work when we say, I don't want this and I don't want that, and it doesn't work. It just kind of gets bypassed or lost within the system. Mm-hmm, so those are just a few suggestions to start with, and I think one of the things that we can do as well is simply, and yes, being gentle with ourselves by not blaming ourselves for the condition of the planet. And if we don't blame ourselves, then we also have to not blame others, which is sometimes harder to do. It's hard not to look at leadership and not say it's your fault and this would not have happened without your leadership or your corporate greed or your, snagging extra resources from third world countries or something like that, because those things also will not promote our true intention.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So what you're saying earlier is that we can do is change our focus, the collective consciousness. If we change our focus from all of this is awful, things are falling apart, to this is a natural cycle, and we're at a point where we can create anew.
Yeah.
That can shift things quite a bit, correct?
Yes, exactly. To the degree, to the degree that we can do that, and to say that, yes, it's not a deniability thing. It's not saying, oh, this isn't really happening. This isn't really awful.
Oh, no.
But it's to see that it's happening on one level. Yes, on this level is breaking down. On another level, which may be invisible to us, still most likely is, we do not yet see what benefit or what other cycles or things are being created that are not here and now yet, because we're still in the breaking down cycle.
Yes.
And those parts are natural. Our food has to break down in our body for our body to be able to use it, turn it into energy and use it. So we have to remind ourselves of these examples.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And the word cycle, and to really focus on that too, because it's a cycle. And so it's a circle, and it doesn't end. It looks like things are ending, but it's just the way the energy flows. And after that chaos and the destruction comes creation.
Yeah. Right.
So we are at that time.
Me of, when you said, sorry to interrupt you, when you said mythology, there's a story, and I've actually been meaning to copy it out of one of the books that I have because I like their version of it, and put it out there. So I will. If you happen to be in touch with me, you'll see it from me soon. Now that you've reminded me of that. So the basic story, it's a creation, uncreation kind of a myth story, and it goes something like this. There's an old woman in a cave, and she's the one responsible for all of creation. So this is a really beautiful story, and I'm going to just paraphrase it here really shortly.
Mm-hmm.
So she's making this beautiful weaving as she's sitting on the floor in this cave, making this beautiful weaving of threads and beads and shells and all these beautiful things that's making creation happen, making this incredible garment of creation. Then she has to feed herself. So at a certain point, she has to get up, put the weaving down, and go and stir this pot of food. And the food represents the resources and things that also have to be stirred up and moved and like soil or turned over. But in this creation story, it's a big pot of soup that has to be stirred. So she gets up from her weaving to go stir this incredible pot so that it will keep simmering and cooking. And then while she's doing that, she has a pet, a big black dog that is her companion. And so while she's stirring this soup, this big black dog goes to the weaving and starts to unmake all of this weaving, all the threads coming out, all the shells, and all the beautiful gemstones and things that she wove into this. And of course, that represents the coming undone, right, of these different cycles. And so she finishes stirring the pot, and she goes back to the weaving and sees what has been done. And of course, what is there to do but to begin again? Yeah. And so she begins again this beautiful weaving and this beautiful new pattern, new way of doing things. And then the story goes on. And of course, I've told it in a very short way, not to take up all your time today, but that it represents these great cycles, and you can see how inevitable it is. She has to make the weaving for creation to go on. She has to stir the pot for the resources to continue, and yet, this is what happens.
Yeah, it's just the cycle of energy. It's just how energy goes. And as long as we understand that it is a circle, it is a cycle, and that we are recreating anew. And, I think that's really important for us. And, as you're saying earlier about the focus and the language, too, to say, oh, I don't like that, but rather to change the focus and change the language to this is what I'm choosing, because the universe is just a big mirror, and it's going to reflect back to you exactly what you, put out there. Yeah, so to remind ourselves, like, oh, okay, that's what I'm putting out, and it really feels now, and maybe you felt this too, Pepper, I don't know, but I think we're manifesting a lot faster now than we were. We went through a gateway here, and I really was like, okay, Joan, catch yourself, because what you put out is really going to come back quickly now.
Yeah. It seems so odd to say that because there's still 24 hours in a day. And, we break up our day by, hours and whatever we do. But somehow it seems like the day has gone by too fast, the hours of the day, whatever activities were associated with it. And so somehow, yes, I think that time, and there are theories that say that time is not a constant, that time evolves as we do. We are the creators of time, after all, and then we entered time, as some of the other myths tell us as well. So the fact that we can also accelerate time and maybe not remember that we were going to do that also makes sense in a certain way. Another thing tells us that, just as you said, we're in these great cycles, circles, or spirals of time. And long ago, we understood that. We understood and we measured time by these great and profound cycles. But when we came up with different calendars and other measures, and when we started counting and writing our histories, we also began to measure time in this linear way. So, we went from measuring time or history from point A to point B. And when time became linear that way, instead of circular, instead of these great cycles, then I think we fell into this way of accelerating things as well, because we're trying very hard to get to point B, wherever point B is. So it's like a race where circular time is not like that. And I think that may have contributed to some of this breakdown of time or these accelerated principles as well. Or maybe we're just in a hurry to get to this, Aquarian time that we can feel its nearness, its proximity. So we are rushing ourselves forward as well.
Yeah, I remember Ian Lungold said, one of the students of the Mayan calendar, and he said that, it feels like time is speeding up, but actually it's creation that will be speeding up now. And that's what the Mayans had predicted. And it feels like the spinning of the spiral, as you move down, let's say, like a vortex, like a tornado. You start at the top and it's spinning down and down, and it gets faster as you get down towards the apex of it. And it feels like that's what we're going, because that's like, if you can imagine, I do a lot of scientific stuff, so if you can imagine, well, let's imagine an hourglass shape, okay? And so you're coming, and these could be the two jets out of like a black hole. But as you're coming down, it's moving faster, and then you get to that one point of stillness before it goes into that next cycle, and that's really quick too. And that's what it feels like to me, like we're in the bottom of the, part of the top of the hourglass, whatever, like it's moving really, really fast now.
Well, what do you think then? So let's say, as you say, so we move and shape time to go very quickly, and then what happens when we get to that point? And then beyond it, do things slow down again? Or does it remain accelerated?
Yeah, it will. Yeah, it feels like when we get to that point, it's like the 0 point of stillness, that place of pure potential, where we're suspended, quote unquote, in time.
Right.
And then, and then once we realize, we're on the other side. Look at all, like the story that you said, that the woman that was weaving, and she looked down and she saw all those gems, and they're like, wow, I can put them together this way. And then you get that enthusiasm, and then creation really starts to flow quickly again. And then it slows, and then you go through the cycle all over again. And actually, that's the shape of the torus, and that's what happens. You go spinning back around, and you come back down and around, and that's the flow of the universe. That's the flow of the energy. So that's what I see in an analogy to all of this.
Right. So do you think that we will be conscious enough to recognize that? If we can now recognize that we are in this accelerated place, will we also recognize when we do get to that point or to the other side of that point? Will we know it consciously?
It depends on what happens during that point. Because that point could be, as we're talking about these cycles, there's also what's happening about every 12,000 years. We go through this pole shift, this geomagnetic pole shift of the Earth. And we're going through it now. Scientists know that. We see that the electromagnetic field of the Earth is dwindling. And so when that happens, they say, and this has been told through the indigenous, obviously we as a human race have survived this before, and these stories have been passed down actually in these petroglyphs, which is quite interesting, of what had happened. And so they say that there could be a time of this, kind of like that 0 point, where there could be several days of darkness. And like, nothing happens, and you go into that null zone, and not to be afraid, just to stay in that place. I mean, that's been taught by other teachers. So I don't know. I think it depends on what happens. So if we go there, I'm sure that it depends on where you are in your own spiral of evolution, whether you do go into the fear or whether you say, okay, I'm at the 0 point, like, okay, this is the blank rune. This is the womb. This is the place of pure potential. We're changing. This is what's been foretold. And so that's, I feel, why it's important to get this information out. So people, okay, if it does happen that way, who knows? But if it does, then maybe people can be like, okay, that's where we are now.
Yeah.
So I really feel it's dependent too on where the collective consciousness is, because we all are connected and feeding into that. What do you think, Pepper?
What do I think? I believe we are moving to or through threading the eye of the needle. I guess is a good way to put it. We're threading the eye of the needle as far as not only the Earth but the entire human species is concerned. And so this way we have to make ourselves part of the Earth, not separate ourselves from it. Not we humans are in charge of the Earth and her resources. We need to see ourselves as the plants and the animals and just another kingdom of the Earth that happens to be more aware of itself, more conscious of some of these things, and that is our gift as humans is consciousness. So the more conscious we can remain as we move through and into those places, the collective consciousness, as you call it, the more aware that we can be. And I believe that we will hold that awareness. We don't necessarily have to lose it. I think where we have to be most careful is not to fall into the collective unconscious, which is mostly to be, so much thinking that it's about here and about now and about mine versus yours, and whatever it is, my religion versus yours, my belief system versus yours, my backyard versus your backyard, that kind of thing, because I think we will all, there's so much more to be lost than gained in that. In terms of, thinking of 3 days of darkness or something, I don't know if we will see that or feel that physically, or if that is more of a manifestation of more of what will happen within us. I'm not sure, and I would like to think that I will be as conscious as possible when these major things manifest, and yet sometimes I get into my own fear about it. I'm not always that great adventurous person. I stay away from roller coasters, which don't seem that safe to me. And many years ago when I went through a great and powerful earthquake in Los Angeles, I forgot everything that I had ever learned about spirituality or about anything else. I was terrified. I was terrified for myself and my children, for my life, for what was going to happen next. When the ground beneath your feet becomes that unstable, you just forget who or what to trust, and parts of ourselves are just missing in those moments. And so if that's how I felt during a really big earthquake, I have to ask myself, how will I feel, if something else great and powerful that affects the whole planet? And if I feel that way, and thousands or millions of other people feel that way, what will happen, and yet I do believe that these things will happen, because we are due or overdue for these 12,000 year cycles. We're there.
Yeah, and we're all in it together. It's a time where, if nothing else, it hopefully will bring us all together, because if it doesn't do it, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I will completely
to be together and really help each other at that time.
Yeah. When I did go through that earthquake experience, I met neighbors who I had never met before. And, we had darkness for more than 3 days. And so refrigerators were out and everything. And so we shared our food. We got together and ate things according to what would perish. First the perishables, the things that needed to be frozen. We shared responsibilities, watching kids, tracking down lost dogs, and so we became a real neighborhood, a real community. So I have hope, and I would hope that these things would happen for all of us as well, and that we will rediscover some of these things that we have lost in our quest to be individuals that we have right now.
Yes. You also talked about, connecting with the earth and, with the plants, and also how can we stay connected or connect with her? Because some people, I think, have become so disconnected with the earth. How can we connect with the earth and try to keep that connection going?
Yeah, that's, again, I think it depends on how we are organized. I know some people stay here where I live connected with the earth by really appreciating each season that we live in. If you happen to live in a 4-season kind of environment, by really paying attention to where is the position of the sun. Is it high in the sky? Is it low in the sky? To seeing the colors in our environments. I know people that eat seasonally, so they will eat the things that grow in their local environments seasonally. They do their best to eat local, as some people do. I know other people that do the opposite. They eat things that we are able to purchase from countries that would not be able to support themselves otherwise. So these are conscious decisions that people are making. Again, I think it's to really be in tune with the plant kingdom. Out of all the other kingdoms, it is the plant kingdom that is sustaining us, that is giving us our ability to renew the cells in our body and to restore our health. That is where most of the discoveries of medicines come from, for the most part, is the plant kingdom. And if we had to, we can do without eating animals, but we cannot do without eating plants. So it's to be as conscious as possible of the resources that are really given to us. They are given to us. They are not, nature gives these things to us, even though we may have to purchase them, but they are a gift. And we are a gift to the earth, and the earth is a gift to us. So all these things of being in communion with the earth and doing our best not to forget that as we study our little technology instruments and things that tell us what the weather is going to be. So that all of those things are harder now. People used to have to look at the sky to see where the sun was, what time was it, how much more time did they have in the day. And so these are times where technology, artificial light, all of these things keep us in some ways separated from the earth. So we need to do everything that we can to remind ourselves that we are part of the earth, and everything that shows up is a gift from the earth. Not easy, really not easy.
Yeah, because a lot of young people don't know where their food comes from, especially those in cities. They have no idea.
Right. And they don't know where it comes from, and they don't even know what the plant looks like. They don't know that radishes come out of the ground and don't grow on trees, for instance. Yeah, I feel so blessed to have grown up with a vegetable garden that I know, like I know what that plant is, I know what that plant is, and I know how to grow my own food. And it's just amazing. And even in the grocery store, you have to tell them, oh, that's a Cubanelle pepper or something. They don't know what the vegetables or even the fruit are, and it's really sad. Yeah. And I see now that we have plant-based food. They don't call it vegetarian or vegan, or they don't use those terms now. The big term now is plant-based food, and I find that interesting that you made that comment that we really need to connect with the plants. And I'm like, okay, maybe somebody's getting it out. Yes, yeah. Now, on the other side of that, so to say something of the benefit of these times that we're in, we now have things available to us in supermarkets, different fruits and vegetables that we never would have had access to before, because these things can be flown to us and made available to us. There are some people that wouldn't have access to anything but, say, apples or something, depending on where they live, because their climate would not have afforded some of these things. And we can go now and see amazing different fruits. I was in Peru a couple of years ago, and they always have baskets of fruits, and they go shopping most days for some of these new things from the fruit vendor down the street, and they have cherimoyas and so many other kinds of beautiful colored and shaped fruits that we don't see for the most part in our supermarkets, but we can go to some of the specialty stores and have them and not say that they're not available to us at all. So they're here, and whatever we can do is to help people become either more knowledgeable, more educated, more grateful, more whatever we can do in that area. And I suppose, yes, especially with children as well, if we can help children nurture a garden or anything, and to see something grow, put a seed in the ground and watch something come out of the ground, out of just a seed, and turn into this giant tomato plant or whatever it is, and to watch the complete cycles of these things too. When it's done giving fruit, watch it set flower and then fruit, and then you can watch the whole cycle go through. So it would be, in my opinion, of course, so important for children. And I think we're doing the best we can. I'm not really a critic. I wish things were different in some ways, but almost everyone I see is trying so hard in whatever areas of life they're participating in. We may be just treading water, but I think that everyone is trying very, very hard to make this world a better place.
Yes, we tend to focus on the negative and what's going wrong and what people do that's horrible. And we forget to put out there how many people are really helping and doing what's right and contributing. Yes. And I saw recently that putting your hands in soil can help with depression. That there's something that there's something about connecting with, really connecting with the soil of the earth, but also probably to being outside and getting, the energy from the sun and all of that too. I mean, they just say with the soil, I didn't have a chance to really look into the writing of it, but I just find that interesting that can shift.
Well, I like the sound of it.
Yeah. I mean, just think about when you were a kid, wasn't it fun? Just go put your hands in the mud or, to play with the dirt, you got to play with the dirt, got to be in the dirt. Right. Kids just instinctively know that. My uncle used to say, well, you got to eat a peck of dirt in your life,
Yes, I remember that saying. I do. I remember that saying. Now, I actually grew up, I should say, in a little tiny apartment in Hollywood, California, and I did not know what it was like to put my hands in the dirt, in the mud, because not only did I live that way, but my parents would have never allowed it. Little girls don't do that. So it wasn't until someone, an indigenous person from another country, showed me a little garden when I was like 30 years old, and showed me and pulled, pulled a carrot out of the ground, pulled a radish out of the ground, and said, now you do it. As if I was a child, and I did it because I didn't get a chance to do that when I was a child, and that was it. I became a gardener on that day.
Yeah.
And
I've
never stopped.
I know. I'd always love when harvesting potatoes, because that was like, you never know what you're going to find. It's like opening up a gift at Christmas time, or or a birthday gift or whatever. You don't know what you're going to find. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, so these are ways, whatever, and we don't all have access to that, but I do hear more and more about neighborhood gardens, community
Yes.
gardens, rooftop gardens. I know someone who, a friend of my son's, created an app for gardeners who have, say too much of one thing. I got too many tomatoes. What do you got too much of? And it's almost like a little app where you can pinpoint where they live, and you go, and there's no money involved. You just exchange. Here, I'll give you. You got tons of oranges from your tree. I've got too many tomatoes, and you just exchange things. Or it tells you where community drop-off centers are that could use this stuff. And so no money, no anything. Just let's move food around our neighborhood. So these are
beautiful.
all great things that are happening. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we need to hear more of, that people really are using, that's one example of using technology that really does help people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think we may as well get used to it. We may as well like it, because technology, it's not going away. We can't say, well, I'm never going to use an iPhone, or I'm never going to use whatever, because the world will leave us behind. And that's what will happen. We will be in whatever way. No one's going to force us, for the most part, to do these things, but we will be left in another category, in another place, as whatever it is, evolution or technology marches on. There is we hear in a lot of the different studies and things these days of Neanderthals and other cross races of beings who lived, now we know, around the same time as early humans lived, and interbred with early humans. And yet humans that we know now, modern humans, are the ones that survived and kept going, and the Neanderthals and other beings did not. So we have to ask ourselves, why was it humanity that continued to move forward as we interbred, and not these other beings? So when I asked this question many years ago in my spiritual pursuits, in my meditations, in channeling, the answer that I got was that these other earlier beings had lost, or did not have, what we have, which is the ability to imagine, the ability to dream in the way that we do, the ability to daydream, the ability to imagine something and to call it into being. They did not have that. They lived in a kind of a daydream and in a kind of a sleeping dream, but they did not have conscious imaginings. And so at a certain point, you hit an evolutionary wall, because you cannot imagine. You can no longer imagine tomorrow. If you can't imagine tomorrow, tomorrow may not come. And so from a esoteric standpoint, I'll just put that out there, that is, a possibility, a possible explanation for why those beings terminated their time on the planet, and we didn't. So now we need to ask ourselves that same question as well. Do we have the ability to imagine a future for ourselves, so that we can go forward in that way?
That's beautiful. Yeah. And to keep it positive, and to know that another cycle will start.
Yes. Right. Yeah. And, most of the time I'm positive about it. And sometimes, I'll read one too many reports or news cycles about other ways that we find to, exterminate each other or something like that. And, for a few hours here, I will admit to feeling, hopeless a few hours at a time. And then, I have to go out and renew myself. I need to turn off all of those things for a few hours or a few days sometimes, and just remove myself completely from that in order to restore that sense of hope and faith and deliberateness that maybe you sense from me now, because I talk to a lot of people that don't feel that way, and I really want to acknowledge them. I don't want to, be on this show with you and tell you how wonderful everything is all of the time, and why can't we just do this or that? Because it's not like that. Even for the best of us, it's not like that all the time. Even for people that you would consider enlightened, and I really don't like that term at all. I kind of like the term enlivened these days a little bit more. But even those that we consider, very highly evolved spiritually or something, I have talked to these people. I have been with them. They don't have it all the time, and I think the best ones are willing to admit it.
Yeah. Well, they say that we are closer to midnight on the doomsday clock. So, excuse me. There's, so when you're looking at that, it's like, well, I'm like, okay. It's hard when you call it a doomsday clock not to go into the depression or like, okay,
Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah.
So I do. I try now that I love that that one myth so much. I try and say, well, it's time for the old lady to gather up her beads and shells and threads and think of a new pattern or something. She'll be done stirring the pot soon.
Yeah.
She'll head back to her loom and start weaving again.
Excuse me. Yes.
And hopefully I'll be one of those threads.
Yeah. Really, that we get woven back in again. Well, we'll get woven back in somewhere, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. Please weave me back in. I'll be something else.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for. Boy, this hour went by fast.
Oh, it did. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for all of your wisdom, and this is just a great segue into what's going to happen next week, because talking about what's happening on the earth right now, like you said, can get really depressing. Can sound really dark, and I don't want to put out information that's like, oh, okay, well, there's, all these volcanoes went off today, and there's more earthquakes, and, there's floods over here, and there's fires over here, and this happened there, and so what can we do? And so next week on our show, Jane Reading, who's been on the show before, who has her own water transformation site and works with water, and I will co-host our first Loving the Earth Day, and we're going to do that once a month. And so it's a show to get together and to share some empowering information with all of you out there, and to bring in some positive changes, whatever we can do. Those stories that you shared, Pepper, about creating that app where we can, share our surplus with each other. Things that we can do in that way, things that we can do maybe a little bit more esoterically, but things that will bring us together and that will give us some sort of hope and empowerment. So that will be our next show. Thank you so much again, Pepper, for coming on. And once again, Pepper's website is pepperkeenlewis.com. And so much love to all of you out there. And thank you so much for tuning in today. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Take care, everyone. Love the earth. Please take care.